Good morning. Happy New Year. It looks like our board member John Slattery has not made it this morning, so I'll offer a welcome myself. So glad you are here. Welcome to the North Shore Unitarian Church, where our mission is to empower people to live with greater depth, meaning, and purpose. Whoever you are, whomever you love, however you name the sacred, however you make your living, whoever you are, we hope you will feel welcome here. A couple of things to announce, let you know happening in the life of our community. Next week is going to be a town hall, a makeup town hall, for those of who missed the December town hall about the new site that we're considering building a church on. So if you would like to learn more about that, if you weren't able to make it in December, consider staying after the service. John Biasucci, who's chair of the new building task force, will be leading that. So plan to stay next week. Today, after the service, we typically have our soup for Sundays and some adult religious education work, but the soup is not happening. It's too early in the new year. So I will be around after if anyone wants to stick around and have some of that wounded words conversation. Worship was our topic for the month, so if you want to stick around, we'll have a short conversation. I know people need to get out to have lunch, but stick around and we'll kind of, as soon as we can after the service, gather and talk. If you're visiting with us, if you're a newcomer, still checking out this community, I invite you to sign in on the iPad or fill out one of the visitor information cards around. We'll get in touch and you can get to know us a little bit better. And also today after the service, immediately, right after, I'll just wait up here if anyone would like to learn a little more about our congregation, our tradition. We'll do UU 101, Unitarian Universalism 101. So just a few brief minutes after the service if you'd like to know more. Once again, Happy New Year. Welcome. So glad to be with you.
I'm going to tell you a story. It's the time of New Year's resolutions. How many people have made a resolution? And how many people have stopped making resolutions? Well, of course, there's a reason for that, and I think we all know what it is. I certainly do. For many years ago, I needed to start exercising and stop smoking. And I would try to stop and start and start and stop, and the last resort was this time of year. 364 days of failure meant you could do it one more time. And this was the time for that. And, well, it didn't really work for me. I guess there are people that have that work. I always knew one person who always made their resolution work, the exception to the rule. However, one day my son Matt, he was actually about the same age as Max there. After one of those school programs about smoking in the backyard, he looked at me and he said, "Dad, smoking is bad for you." And you know those moments that are just so big? I looked at this little guy, 4 feet high, looking at me, and suddenly you realize that is what you want to do. Once a year, I used to congratulate myself when the kids lived at home at just being alive one more year, and I realized that this was fighting with my goal. And so I stopped smoking because I looked at him, and in that wonder of a child, that open face, I made that resolution. The exercise thing, on the other hand, I'm still working on that. But when I looked at him, he kind of pulled me into myself in a way that resolutions didn't. They sort of projected what I wanted to do. In that moment, my son pulled me into myself. And that's one of the reasons why I come to church.
In the Talmud, which is that Jewish collection of rabbinic commentary and on the commentary on the commentary on the commentary on the Torah, this long lineage of commentary. There's a story told about Rabbi Zusia. Rabbi Zusia, a righteous man, A righteous rabbi, he's called, lay dying, and his disciples surrounded him, and they were astonished to see that their teacher, their sage, this man whom all regarded as a model of appropriate thought and deed, that he shook with fear at the prospect of death, and not just death, but judgment. So, Master, they said, why do you fear God's judgment? You have lived a life with the faith of Abraham. You've been as nurturing as Rachel. You've feared the divine as Moses. Why do you fear judgment? And he took a deep, shuddering breath and replied, when I come before the throne of judgment, I'm not afraid that God will ask, why were you not more like Abraham? After all, I can say, oh God, you of all know best that I'm not Abraham, I'm Zeusia. How then should I have been more like Abraham? And if God should ask, why were you not more caring like Rachel? I can respond, Master of the universe, you made me to be Zeusia, not Rachel. If you wanted to be more like Rachel, you should have made me more like Rachel. Should the true judge say, Zeusia, why were you not more like Moses? I can respond, O mysterious one, who am I, Zeusia, that I should be like Moses? But I tremble in terror, because I think the Eternal will ask me another question. I believe I will be asked, Zeusia, why were you not more like Zeusia? And when I am asked this, how shall I respond? Yasha, why were you not more like Yasha? Barry, why were you not more like Barry? Marcus, why were you not more like Marcus? So the most widely reported study that I found says almost half of adults in North America make New Year's resolutions. So we're a little underrepresented in the, according to Carrie's scientific survey earlier. Yeah. And of those half, about 8% keep them. 8%. This has been, studied a few times over the decades. This is the most recent study. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to offer a bit of scriptural reassurance. Growing up Unitarian, I didn't learn much about Jesus besides the beginning of the story and the end of the story, which, as I've said, are kind of the strange parts we hold on to because of the holidays around them. But so when I imagined, when people would mention the Sermon on the Mount, I thought it was, Jesus kind of strolling into town on the donkey, right? He's on his mount. As he rode, I really did. So that was always my image of, and so the Sermon on the Mount, and it turns out it was actually a different moment in the story. In fact, it comes when Jesus is starting to get a bit of a reputation. He's had this time in the wilderness, started his career as an itinerant preacher. He's started gathering some devoted disciples around him, and then he starts performing miracles. He starts healing the sick. That's how the story goes, which attracts a lot of attention. So large crowds from all around, all different cities around the area start flocking to him. But then the story takes, to what my modern ears seems like a kind of an unexpected twist. Instead of basking in the love of these crowds surrounding him, Jesus gets kind of overwhelmed. Instead of feeding off their excitement and building the momentum, he decides to take a break. He retreats from the crowds and goes for a hike. Finds a nice spot on the mountain. And his disciples go along on his hike with him. And there, with his closest friends, he gives the Sermon on the Mount, not in a great public setting, not the spectacle of the donkey riding into Jerusalem, although I do think preaching on a donkey riding into town, it just has That's my fantasy, not Jesus's, I guess. But so there he is, the Sermon on the Mount, sitting with his closest friends after sharing a mountain walk, and it begins, of course, with the Beatitudes, maybe the most iconic passage in all his teachings. And then after that, he gets around to some other topics. That's where I want to go, and here's one of them. He says, "You've heard it was said to those of ancient times, 'You shall not swear falsely, but carry out the vows you've made to the Lord.' But I say to you, do not swear at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by the earth, for it is God's footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. Do not swear by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black." Don't swear at all. Don't make vows. Don't make promises, because you cannot make one hair white or black. And that's why whenever anyone asks me if I've made New Year's resolutions, I confidently let them know that Jesus has told me I don't have to. But really what this bit is about in historical context is poking fun at the cultural trope, and it's still around, of making extravagant sounding oaths to try and convince people to trust them. Right? You know the gag. I swear by God and by heaven and earth and by the great city of Vancouver and Her Royal Majesty, the Queen. You know, the swearing of oaths. And I do think there's some related element in our cultural tradition of New Year's resolutions. You make the New Year's resolution not actually because you're going to keep it necessarily, but in order to proclaim to those around you, yes, I know I'm overweight, and this is the time of year when I acknowledge that and promise to change it. Yes, I know I'd be healthier if I got more exercise. I'll change it. I know I'd be more well-informed if I read more. I'll change it. I know I'd be more responsible if I did something different with my finances. I'll change it. I know I'd be a better person if. And you know it. And before you and all our friends, and at the great dawning of the new year, the 2018th year of our Lord, I hereby swear. Jesus concludes that bit by simply saying, "Let your word be yes, yes, or no, no." So we're going to be exploring this theme of intention all month. I've mentioned before this year we're using materials from a collective of Unitarian congregations. It's called Soul Matters. And if you'd like to go deeper with the theme, there's a packet out on the table in the foyer that's got exercises and questions and other resources. The packet's the starting place for the Soul Matters small groups that have begun meeting. So if you take a look and you're interested in that, you'd like to join a small group, let the church office know. It's anytime you can join. And so ministers and lay leaders and religious educators, they from all over the continent, to discuss these themes in preparation and plan for the packets. And one minister, Katie Covey, she summarized the conversation about intention like this. She said, "Here's what I discovered. Intention is different from setting goals or resolutions in that it pulls us into who we truly are. Goals and resolutions push us out into future possibilities. To set intentions, we listen to our inner voice, which tells us who we truly are." Made me think of these lines from the lifelong Unitarian Universalist poet and writer May Sarton. She said, "Now I become myself. Now I become myself. It's taken time. Many years and places I've been dissolved and shaken, worn other people's faces. Have you ever worn other people's faces? Sometimes I feel like I have a whole collection of faces. Other people's or my own, masks, the good son, the solid partner, the dramatic actor, the dutiful student, the cunning game player. You don't get to see that one much. The tragic poet, the annoyed big brother, the skillful teacher, the playful friend, the sarcastic know-it-all, all me, yet none all of me. None the true me, the essential me. And the practice of integrity, of integration, is to say yes to all of these selves. And I think Jesus' instruction to forget all the big oaths and resolutions, to let your yes be simply yes, your no be simply no, is about the practice of intentionally being simply me. It's good to integrate all of these selves, all of these faces, and it's also good to go a step deeper on all of these faces, to listen for that essential self, that core, that one crane thought. What our forefather William Ellery Channing would have called our likeness to God, or what Buddhists name our Buddha nature. I want to share more of that poem with you. Now I become myself. It's taken time, many years and places. I've been dissolved and shaken, worn other people's faces, run madly, as if time were there, terribly old, crying a warning. Hurry, you will be dead before what? Before you reach this morning, or the end of the poem is clear, or love safe in the walled city. Now to stand still, to be here, feel my own weight and density. The black shadow on the paper is my hand, the shadow of a word, as thought shapes the shaper. As thought shapes the shaper, falls heavy on the page is heard, all fuses now, falls into place, from wish to action, word to silence. My work, my love, my time, my face, gathered into one intense gesture of growing like a plant. From wish to action, word to silence, my work, my love, my time, my face, gathered into one intense gesture of growing like a plant. How different it is, I think, this growing like a plant, than the forced stretch of January's malevolent self-betterment. So I wonder this, what if we were to make resolutions as if they were wedding vows to ourselves? Now, your spouse might also wish you would lose 15 pounds and quit smoking, but that would never show up in the wedding vows. I'm pretty sure in every wedding I've ever performed, the couple has chosen to write their own vows. Writing your own vows is in, especially amongst the demographic interested in a Unitarian minister performing their wedding. And I do not counsel engaged couples that Jesus said not to swear any oaths, unless I really don't want to do their wedding. But here's what I say about vows. Vows are covenantal, not contractual. Vows are covenantal, not contractual. They are your highest aspirations for yourself and for your partner. They're not what you are sure you can deliver. They are not what you are sure you can deliver, but rather what you longingly hope for and are working to become. Vows, true and real vows, are a form of intention, a promise to continue becoming, continue growing like a plant. This weekend, Emily is in San Diego to participate in the ordination of a dear friend and now colleague, Kristen Karuga. It'll happen later today. Ordinations are somewhat of another kind of marriage. Not to another person, but to a calling, a community, a tradition. In Unitarian ordinations, there are usually no vows spoken as such, but there is the weight of vow, of sacred intention present. The traditional processional that begins in ordination is the hymn Rank by Rank. It's full of pomp and ceremony. Rank by rank again we stand, from the four winds gathered hither. And you have to sing it in that voice when you're singing it too. And the song pays homage to the generations that have come before. Lives that speak and deeds that beckon, it says. Crescendos with this line, may what they dreamed be ours to do. So the sacred intention in an ordination, in part, it's an embodiment of something that is already true for all of us. We inherit who we are before we choose who we will become. Our true self, our one crane thought, comes from a wellspring that is deeper than our own individual lives. To align ourselves with the intention the world has always had for us is perhaps the greatest resolution, promise, or vow we can make. The Quaker teacher, Parker Palmer, whose work's the foundation of the small group practice that I mentioned, he puts it like this: before you tell your life what you intend to do with it, listen for what it intends to do with you. Before you tell your life what truths and values you've decided to live up to, let your life tell you what truths you embody, what values you represent. Before you tell your life what you intend to do with it, listen for what it intends to do with you. And I got to this point in the sermon, I realized there have to be a few of you who are thinking, okay, all this spiritual blah, blah, blah is all well and good, and yes, intentions, not goals and resolutions, and allowing my true self to be drawn forth, okay. But what about actually making some changes in my life? There is some social science about those 8% of people who do stick to their New Year's resolutions. Contemporary psychology offers a couple of pathways. One, this comes from Charles Duhigg. He delves into it in his book, The Power of Habit. He offers a nuanced understanding. It's well worth a read if you're interested in this stuff. But essentially, he says in order to change a habit or make a new one, you have to do three things. Make it small and specific. Really small. And then attach it to a habit that you already have. So that when you do that habit, it prompts you to do the other one. And then you have to make it as easy as possible for a week. All the Post-it note reminders, keep it really easy so that you just get in the habit. That's the behavioralist approach. And it works. This is what we know from social science. That's how to actually create a new habit. And on the other hand, there's author Timothy Wilson who writes in his book Redirect about the narrative approach. And he says to make a life change, start with your self-story. Write it out the way it is. Pay attention to anything in it that goes against the intention you'd like to cultivate. Write it out the way it is and pay attention to anything that goes against the intention you'd like to cultivate. Then write a new version that fits more of how you'd like to become. And of course, this brings us back to that true self and all that nonsense about the inner life. The truth of intention, or even any of its more goal-oriented cousins, is we have to begin where we are. Attach a new habit to a habit that is already you. Start with the self-story you already have. Before you tell your life what you intend to do with it, listen for what it intends to do with you. Make a promise that you will not abandon yourself. Let your words be yes, yes, or no, no. Make resolutions not because you will live up to them, but because you wish to give voice and shape to your becoming. This is the process of saying yes, not to cultural impositions, not to the shoulds of resolutions we should make to fit into an external mold, but to the yes of a deep call to our own being. The seed planted within us before we even existed, that longing to become fully you. So a poem to close. God Says Yes. It's by Caitlin Hout. I asked God if it was okay to be melodramatic, and she said yes. I asked her if it was okay to be short, and she said it sure is. I asked her if I could wear nail polish or not wear nail polish, and she said, honey, she calls me that sometimes. She said, you can do just exactly what you want. Thanks, God, I said. And is it even okay if I don't paragraph my letters? Sweet cakes, God said it. Who knows where she picked that up? What I'm telling you is, yes, yes, yes. Maybe so. Amen.